What's up again, everybody? Well, it's time. We're doing this thing. It's the banned and suspended announcement. It's been like a week. Well, technically it's been 5 days. As of me recording this, it's been 4 days. 5 days. Some amount of days. Because this came out like while I was trying to recover from the calling Taiwan. I am probably recovered now. Man, that was really fun though. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And they posted this in the evening after that, so I went to sleep early, and so I haven't had a chance all week to really sit down and talk about it, but I've had a lot of feelings about it. So I'm just going to go through the entire thing and tell you how I feel about all of this and what I think this is going to mean for the meta going forward. A lot of it is very positive. So let's talk about it. First of all, this was planned for May the 2nd, and it goes into effect on May the 2nd. The reason that they released it early, and I think it's 100% right for them to do so, is that they saw that Starvo is not going to hit Living Legend status because it lost too many. It didn't win too many of these events that are coming soon, right? Or that are already taking place. It lost too many events, which is a weird thing to say about a hero because a hero shouldn't win everything, and that's part of the reason why Starvo's really good. So they just said, let's just release it, and that gives people more time to test and play around with the classic constructed meta, and that is, again, 100% the right choice. So with all this said, this will go into effect in a few days of you watching this video, or it is already in effect. And the classic constructed changes are this: Awakening is banned. Autumn's Touch is suspended until Bravo Star of the Show becomes Living Legend. Bloodsheath Skeleta is suspended until Viscerai Runeblood becomes Living Legend. And Seeds of Agony moves from banned to suspended. Basically, Seeds of Agony was already banned. They just decided, you know what, let's move it to the suspended list so that after Chain rotates, people can play Seeds of Agony with the next Shadow Runeblade that we release, whether it be just Chain with a different effect or a completely new character hero with Shadow Runeblade class. Either way, you're going to have access to Seeds after this. So let's just talk about these changes first. First of all, I am most happy about this change. I think Awakening's a really cool card, theoretically. I think Awakening is very interesting. It's a cool, compelling design idea. You make a catch-up card that allows you to claw your way back into a game off of the back of a very thematic token that you make in the class, in Seismic Surge tokens. And if you fuse it, you get extra value, so it makes sense, right? Just run it in your Oldhim deck because it's cool. The problem with the card is an incredibly above rate. It's incredibly overpowered for what the card can do, and that's single-handedly win you the game after you're losing. You can be losing, in fact you have to be losing the game in order to play this card for effect, and then you win the game, or you're winning the game. But with Guardians, you're probably just going to win the game. You play a couple of Awakenings. You play an Awakening, and you're back in the game. So from a design perspective, it's a miss, but the idea is very cool. It is just too far above rate. It swings games too uncomfortably, and from a perspective of actually playing it out, it's not fun to play against. And for me, they actually spell out all three of these changes down here, by the way, if you're very curious as to their own reasoning, and I'll talk to you about the reasoning just in general as I go, because I think their reasoning is all very valid. But this card, they could have just gone down there and put Awakening is banned because it breaks several of the tenets that we want to instill in our game. Namely, decision-making matters, because this is a card that allows you to basically not have to make decisions and still win. So I think it's a great, cool idea for a card, and one that if they made cost 6, like Arclight Sentinel, probably would have been okay, but it doesn't cost 6. And so it should be gone, and it is gone in both Classic Constructed and Blitz. So I'm most excited about that change. Autumn's Touch is suspended in Bravo, Star of the Show, and technically it's suspended across all decks. but it's suspended until Bravo rotates, and I think Bravo will rotate quickly because I think these changes don't actually knock Bravo that much. They probably just knock it enough for it to not be super dominant, and I think that's all that the overall player base probably wants, so that at some point it will reach Living Legend status because it just has to pick up a couple of those smaller event wins, and then it moves on into the sunset, but you can still technically pick it up and play it. I think that's a nice happy medium. If it ends up winning Pro Tour #1, I'm not sure there's going to be that many people that are like, you know, really filled with vitriol over that experience. And it does have enough power to still win Pro Tour #1, and I think it still will be fairly well represented there, just not to the extent that it is, and that's exactly what I think we should all want, because any hero that's highly represented and is performing as that well just probably doesn't need to be in the format. So I think it's an interesting way by banning Awakening and then by knocking Autumn's Touch. I think it's a fun way of balancing the hero, pulling the hero's overall power level down. Why Autumn's Touch? Well, it's a block 3 that you can pitch for blue that triggers on the overall effect from Bravo Star of the Show, and also fuses all of your fuse targets. So literally, it's Seeds of Agony for Starvo. Like, when you put it in that perspective, it's like, yeah, that card should probably be banned. We saw what happened with Seeds of Agony, or suspended perhaps. We saw how good Seeds of Agony is. And you look at Seeds of Agony and it's so innocuous. It's like a card that's a non-attack, that blocks 2, that causes 1 arcane damage to be dealt alongside of an attack. So even if you just play it, it doesn't actually do anything by itself. You look at that and you're like, why is that card banned? And then you realize that in Chain, Seeds of Agony, like, turns on like from Blood Debt, like you can play it from Blood Debt. It turns on non-attack action being played so that you can play like other things from your banished zone. It allows you to turn on arcane damage trigger stuff. You can play multiple of them from your banished zone along with other cards so that you can trigger Eclipse. It's great for pitching to play for the second cycle. It just did all the stuff. That's what Autumn's Touch does. And so you take away Autumn's Touch, and then if you want to keep those same ratios in Starvo, you have to swap in like Evergreens, which people weren't really playing at all because it blocks 2. But you can still play it for the same effect, the same function. It's just now that it blocks 2, it's a little less consistent as far as blocking is concerned. You could try subbing in other cards. Like, people are already kind of playing Break Ground, so Break Ground's like, you could play Burgeoning. Burgeoning's now a thing you can kind of throw in there if you haven't already. Essentially, it's just forcing you to play with even more suboptimal cards, and that's a cool way to pull the power level down. Is it enough? We'll find out. We'll find out if Pro Tour #1 says that it's enough or not. My first take is that probably. But then as I've thought about it, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. We will really see. Bloodsheath Skeleton being suspended in Viserai, or until Viserai is Living Legended out of the format, is like low-key huge to me. Like, I feel like this hits me more. It strikes me more than the 2 bans that Starvo basically received. This strikes me more because Viserai has always had this identity of building up rune chance and then gaining value off of something like a Skeleton, right? Something like a what his specialization that no one plays, which is really sad. But not Oath of the Arknight. What is it? Why am I blanking on Arknight Ascendancy? That card. No one plays that, but again, you're getting value off making rune chance because it's cheaper. Ninth Blade of the Blood Oath, same way. Skeleton, same way. It gives you that value. So it's a very thematically tied to Viserai kind of a card. But it's also so powerful as far as enabling what the actual archetype wants to do. Especially nowadays that Viserai has received so many powerful Runeblade cards, and just Runeblades in general, received so many powerful Runeblade cards that it makes sense that they're going to either hit this or Sonata Arcanix. And it's interesting that they chose to hit this in Classic Constructed, where the games are longer, and they choose to hit Sonata Arcanix in Blitz, where the games are shorter. I think that's very smart by them, but I also say that if you're going to hit one or the other, this is probably the more powerful of the two to hit, because you can still play Sonata and then pay for it to buff it up, but you're never getting the value, like the crazy Sonata spikes. You can still play it, it's still playable. But Bloodsheath Skeleton enabling like multiple big, like a big attack to be played, a non-attack like Rattlebones to be, you know, pulling something out and slamming that down as well. I think probably does more for those big giant turns than pitching a bunch into a Sonata, because you don't have access to Bloodsheath Skeleton anymore. So I think this is a bigger hit as far as power level if you just banned this versus Sonata Arcanix and Classic Constructed. I think this one does a big number on Viserai as far as what you're gonna do and like what your power turns now look like. I think you can still play him. He can still be good and he can still do a lot of work, but I don't think he's doing the same types of things. And I mean, how can you? I mean, you can't build up a billion, like you can't put 12 rune chants on the board, pop Skeleton, play Sonata, draw a bunch of cards. Like that doesn't exist anymore and will never exist for Viserai Runeblood, period, until you play the Living Legend format. It's just not a thing you can do anymore in the game unless they decide to reverse this this course. So we'll see, but I think that's a big hit for Viserai. I would honestly, the more I've thought about it, the more I'm thinking maybe this is a bigger hit to Viserai than Bravo got. I don't know. Tell me in a comment below. Maybe I'm wrong on that read. Just overall completely. This we don't even talk about because it's like whatever. I mean, it's still banned. The card's still banned. They say the same exact things, like Autumn's Touch being suspended pulls back consistency. You can gain consistency for the Starvo trigger by putting in more Earth cards. You have to put in 9 other cards though, because there were a lot of people that were just playing full-on Autumn's Touches, and so you're putting in 9 2-blocks, and 9 2-blocks doesn't feel good. So maybe I am underselling this this Autumn's Touch change, even though I do fundamentally agree it's a huge change. But maybe that's just more impactful than Viserai losing the Skeleton. I don't know. Blitz. All right, I have some things to say about Blitz. All in all, I think Classic Constructed, I think those are good changes. I think it's going to make a lot more opportunity in the space for other decks to kind of live, or to try and live, to cut into the meta. Blitz is interesting. So first of all, we have our first Living Legend hero, and that's Viserai. He was on a tear. He earned himself a spot in that Living Legend, you know, like pantheon, if you will. And with him leaving, we now have Oldhim in place, firmly entrenched as the #1 big dog in the format. I think Oldhim is the best deck in the format going forward, and I don't think there's a clear-cut, in my mind, deck that challenges it to the same degree. Because again, in this format, we lose Awakening for him, but we don't lose all the Autumn's Touches. If they would have said Autumn's Touch is gone here too, that would have been an intriguing proposition for Oldhim to have to deal with and swap in some other cards that block 3 and can also give you the Earth Fuse. But it probably wouldn't have even then been that big of a deal, because like Control Oldhim is still just super solid, right? Super solid. And that is that's the problem, is that what really pushes that deck without just being another version of Oldhim or Guardian or something like that, because it's just so oppressive to be able to just block things out all the way, and your opponent just fatigues themselves over time. It's a very long, drawn-out game, and if you want to slow down the meta, which is exactly what all of these things are sort of doing in this format, it's successful. Legend Story Studios is going to be successful in slowing down the meta, but the question becomes this, is the unintended consequence that Oldhim, the slowest of the slow, slows everything down so much that people don't want to play the format. I'm curious to find out. I'm very curious, and I think I'll have to be playing a lot of the format to really find out for myself. But my first take is that Oldhim is now just so incredibly powerful. How does he not get picked up and just played like to the moon? Because you can just get there with fatigue. Awakening Band, the other problem too is this. Heart and Cross Trap basically just challenges Oldhim by giving you this really above rate power turn, wherein you like, I'm gonna seize control of the game, and I'm gonna just lob over Oldhim's defenses by popping Heart and Cross Trap, playing this thing for 2, somehow giving it maybe an action point or go again, I'm playing it for free, and I'm coming across, and they're going to have to do something about it. Oh, now I can't do that anymore. So there's decks that like could maybe, like for example, if I'm looking at targeting Oldhim, who's great at defending, just like walling up, I would want to take cards from hand, right? So one way to take cards from hand is with Rhinar and intimidating cards out of their hand, something that they can't really respond to. And one of the best tools for that is playing something like a Heart and Cross Strap, so that you can come in on an off turn and salvage that off turn by making something big cost 0 and then threatening your, opponent by removing cards from their hand before they even get to block, and then blocking suboptimally. Now you can't really do that. You have to find a different way to do that. So I'm very interested to see where this goes. I want to know how this format's going to play out. So I think we need to run some events on the old Discord and see how just normal old Blitz plays out. Seeds is whatever, because Seeds was already banned. Now it's just suspended, which is cool. You'll get to play Seeds eventually again. Snapback is suspended until the next scheduled announcement following the conclusion of Skirmish Season 5. By the way, this was the first mention of Skirmish Season 5. Skirmish Season 5 was not mentioned. Now we have a date for it. August 22nd is the end of Skirmish Season 5. So that would probably run all the way through July. No, maybe all the way through August. Like last weekend in July, all the way through basically to the end of August is probably what they're looking at as start and stop dates. But Snapback being suspended, I'll tell you why I think that they're making this call overall. First of all, they want to slow down the format. Second of all, people don't like losing like on turn 2 or 1. Like that's what they talked about. I don't know if they talked about it right here in the article or not. Yeah, they kind of give the idea. They're talking about it. They want to slow the format down. They want to make sure that people don't feel bad when they lose on turn 2 to like Aether Wildfire, Snapback, something like that. That is a lot less consistent than it would at first appear. Namely because Snapback actually is just a little hard to use in practice as far as lining up Snapbacks on specific turns. Like it's a good value card in your hand. Snapback is weird. And I may have a contrarian opinion on this. I feel like Snapback reminds me more of Aether Flare than it does of a card like like a Wildfire combo piece. Because Aether Flare is one of those cards that you just use for the value. When you find an Aether Flare in your hand, you play it for the value of playing it. And if you get value off of it, then great. But if you don't, then don't hold on to it for too long, because it's really just like a bait card to a certain degree. Snapback to me is exactly that. And it's a good card for trying to get extra, pushes and extra spells down onto the same turn. It's like free and easy to do that, right? You play one, then you can play this one from hand. But without it, it doesn't really change that much. It makes the deck slightly worse on just normal turns. When you want to go like, name any spell into Snapback. Like, that's just like a normal turn. Voltic Bolt, Snapback. You pitch a blue, play a Voltic Bolt, follow it with a Snapback. Like, on that turn, it's just solid. It's good. It's a good card. The other nice thing that you can do is arsenal a Snapback and then play it at instant speed on your opponent's turn after, KOing something off the top. That's another thing that you can do with Snapback. So losing Snapback is a hit to the deck. And not only to Kano, it's also a hit to Icelander. And that's what I haven't seen anyone talk about this week, is the fact, and I'm sure there are people that have done that, so please forgive me and let me know in a comment below if you've also had this sentiment. But this also hits, it's considered a core card in Icelander. Blue, specifically the blue, but if you're playing the arcane list, then the red as well. The red is considered a core card as well. So it does hit both of those heroes, which is very interesting because we're about to get more wizard cards. So maybe the thought process here is like, okay, in this moment, we know what's coming from the upcoming set, Uprising. We know what wizard cards that are going to be added to the pool. With that knowledge, we know that if we make this ban now, then there will be a month or two, really 2 months of blitz play where wizard is really low, and then maybe the wizard comes back as normal. But I think I think it's going to be really bad for Wizard because of this one specifically. Snapback's a hit, but this one is a backbreaker. Stir the Aether Winds being suspended is horrible. Horrible for both heroes. It's horrible for Kano. It's just as bad, perhaps worse, I would say, perhaps worse for Iyslander, because both of those heroes look to, in general, maybe more so Iyslander than Kano, look to play a Stir Forked turn at any given time. And that's like their power play. Stir Forked is like one of the power plays. Now we have access as well to Aether Wildfire as a power play. And that is a super powerful like game finisher. But Stir is not just a power play for Iyslander. It's like one of the only ones that you have access to, because Aether Wildfire doesn't work great for Iyslander. Works fantastic for Kano. But Stir is also like our only avenue of consistent attack against Oldhim. Did I mention Oldhim's going to be really good in this format, in my opinion? And I hope I'm wrong on that, because I don't want to know. I want to know the implications of what that means, but I'm not sure I want to know the implications. So Stir coming down and just being gone means that you can't Stir Forked, and you can't find a level playing field against a hero that can run 4 Arcane Barrier plus Crown of Seeds. And that is a backbreaker, especially if that hero makes up a decent percentage of the meta. It basically just makes you look at Wizards and go, can I even win this matchup? If not, can I even consistently bring this to a tournament? The answer is probably no. If you can't consistently like find some way to win in that matchup, right? If you're not like 50-50, if you're not 50-50, heck, I would even say if you're not like 40-60, like you're going to lose it more than win it, but at least you can find a way, then you probably just can't even bring Kano to or Iyslander to a tournament. And that's what's scary to me was this one single ban, in my opinion, is maybe pushing a hero completely out of the meta, where it's kind of only lived. Like classic constructed Kano doesn't exist, and hasn't really existed to a large degree outside of like the most recent success that like well, several Kano players have had, like my good buddy Ark over in Italy, which is pretty cool. Justin Graham here in the US, both finding success on Kano. But outside of them, it's like not really the thing that Kano does. Blitz is the thing he does, and now may not be the thing he does. I want to start... there's going to be people in the comments. I can already see it, and you're right. I agree with you if you're in the comments saying this already. Kano still has ways and lines and pitch stack methods to go over the top on Oldhim. But it's the consistency of doing so and the time needed to do so that are sometimes going to go against you. Sometimes the Oldhim player will just play hard control. They'll stop everything you do. They'll just swing a little hammer at you. That's like cool. You could probably pitch stack into that, just be just fine. Sometimes they're not going to do that, and you're just going to die. And oftentimes I feel like that's what it's going to be now, because you don't have the way to threaten over the top of Stir Forked and level the playing field. So the one recourse that I have, and again, I feel very passionately about this, that's why I've talked and rambled so much. The one recourse as Wizards that you could have is playing the hybrid version of Iyslander, the one that uses attacks. That doesn't really play into like AB a bunch. You could do that. The hybrid version may be the way to go, playing things like fire breathing and just dumping all your resources into fire breathing, basically turning it into a big old boy attack. That's one way we could take it if you wanted to play Wizard going forward. It's a fine way to do it too, because they still have to respect arcane damage. Now, maybe, I don't know, maybe they don't if Stir Forked is not a thing. And finally, Sonata is suspended until the next scheduled announcement following the conclusion of Skirmish Season 5. This one actually doesn't feel that necessary in the current state of things with Viserai going, but you can still kind of play Sonata, Bloodsheath Skeleton, like shells. It's just not nearly as good if you play it in Chain or if you play it in Briar, because they're not looking to build Rune Chance. So you basically have to play like Viserai, but in those other decks, and you can't build the Rune Chance as quickly or as easily. Trust me, I actually tried playing OTK Chain, where you do like Skeleton Sonata stuff, and I could have tuned the deck better, I'm sure, but It didn't work great. It didn't feel good. Not being able to go search it up with Become the Arc Knight meant that it wasn't consistent. So, like, this ban is kind of weird in that it's, like, neither here nor there now that Viserai has ridden off into the sunset. Also, Stubby Hammer is being banned, like, preemptively before the release because there's something interesting. I think, here's my hot take. I think, based on one of the most recent posts about the Uprising set, I think the Ninja is going to have the ability to bring allied soldiers that all deal 3 attack and go again. And you just pitch into it, they deal 3 attack and go again, and they're all little guys. So you have like an army of little dudes. And so Stubby Hammers would have been disgusting in that. That's my guess. That's my guess. If you want to know more about what the backgrounds for these, I think these are actually great little write-ups. And I, to a certain degree, agree with a lot of the changes. I really do. I think there's a lot of good thought here. I worry about Blitz, and I'm curious to see how it plays out. But it could also just play. I could be way off base, and it could just play out just totally fine. In fact, we'll find out very quickly because these will go into effect on May 2nd, and then we'll all have a Pro Tour 1 side event set up to kind of grind it out. And then the World Premiere Callings, which I'm really thinking I'm going to go to Vegas and play in those World Premiere things. Maybe even play in the like full-on calling thing as well. As always, everybody, I'm just like, at this point, I'm very interested to get my hands on some decks and just grind out some games and come away with my deeper impressions of the overall changes. I think it's a lot of good stuff, and I really want to see how this classic constructed stuff is going to shape out. The meta that we're going to see in Pro Tour 1 is so hype. If you enjoyed this video, if you got the value out of this content that I hope you did, feel free to make a number, go to a number, and as always, thanks for watching.